clerk's office, and I know that we're looking for ways to bring in more revenue. So we have decided to reorganize, and in our in-house cost collection, we have 2 full-time employees now. Excuse me, and one part-time. She's full-time, but part of her duties is in cost collections and in civil part of general sessions. And I've sat down and talked to the judges, and we decided to go full force on this, and we would like to have a 4-person cost collections department. And I have handed out a request for a new employee. We're asking for 1 new employee to help run that cost collections. The total would be $34,234. That is salary and benefits included. Most of you are aware that the clerk's office has been very aggressive in the 20 years that we have had cost collections department, and brought in quite a bit of revenue for the county. I handed out this paper here earlier to you that shows what our collections have been compared to what our budget has been each year from 2009, 2010 to 13 and 14, and you can see total county revenue that we collected in 09-10 budget was $4,212,000. The appropriations for the clerk's office that year was 1.9. That left excess county revenue that we turned into the general county fund for $2.2 million. And you can see down through there, just last year, 2013, 2014, we collected a little over $4 million again. Our appropriations was $2 million, and we turned excess county revenue in to $2 million, over $2 million that year. What I'm asking is for you to invest $34,000, and if a third of one salary, part-time salary that we're already there, that's not new money that would be going in cost collection, so $44,000 basically, for us to be able to concentrate on doing a better job in collections. In years past, even though it's the circuit court clerk's duty to collect this revenue, we've really not had any teeth. And several years ago, the judges decided to get on board and help, and seen how important it was for us to try to fund the judicial system. Without them, we would not have been able to collect the revenue that we have collected. I handed out some laws that's been passed in the last 3 or 4 years that actually has given us as clerks some teeth to be able to help collect this. You can see that there is a law now on the books that if it owes the court for more than a year, then we will notify them, let them know that they owe us money, give them 10 days to contact the clerk's office, either to pay that in full or to set up a payment plan with the clerk's office. If not, then their driver's license can be revoked at that time if they don't come in or contact us. That has helped us quite a bit to get payment plans set up and get people paying on what they owe the courts. Another law that has passed was last year, the legislature passed a law if we used a third-party cost collections to help us collect. In the past, if you've done that, if they were, say they wanted 25% to collect this, that 25% come out of what revenue that was on the books. The law passed last year that it allows them to add their fee on top of that, so we're not using any of our revenue to pay a third-party person to collect with taxpayers' dollars what's already owed. So they add that on top. So it didn't come out of our revenue. So if we can collect it, our return on that. This year, we have a Clerks Association has a bill at Nashville that has passed out of some of the committees. It's in House Revenue tomorrow, where I've got to be to testify on it. But what it will do, if a person has owed the courts over 5 years, it will allow us to negotiate with that person up to start at a minimum of 50%. They can pay at least 50% of that, get their driver's license back, it's paid in full, it's wiped off the books. And when you say it, well, you're only getting 50%, so you're losing 50%. Well, we are, but what we're losing right now, people that's been out there over 5 years, if you don't have somebody dedicated to track those folks, they move around so much you just can't keep up with them. We're not collecting anything over 5 years old, unless we're lucky and they get rearrested, and then we find where they're at, and then the judges jump in and help us on those. So 50%, if you collect 50%, 1% or 50% of what's owed on the books that's over 5 years old, that could be a lot of revenue. That is one of the things that we're going to dedicate the cost collections department to, is tracking those folks and trying to get that settlements and collect a lot of the overdue revenue that's out there. The administrative offices of courts done a study in 2011, a statewide study of how much money was on the books statewide in clerk's offices that was owed and compared to how much you were collecting. And I'm very proud to say, with the help of the judges and everybody that's involved, the sheriff's department and the DA's office, and that in general sessions, Blount County was #1 in the state with 74% collection rate. Circuit's not as good. Criminal's not as good. And you say, well, why are you so high over here and you're so low on the other side? Most of the cases in general sessions, we settle those most of the time within a year, because most of those are misdemeanors or they're felonies. They get worked down to misdemeanors or they're settled in general sessions. When you take a case to circuit court, your cost goes up. The fines are higher if they're found guilty. Most of the time they serve jail time. You can't collect from the folks that's in jail. When they get out of jail, they've got a felony conviction. It's hard for them to get a job at the time. So those folks are really tough to collect what's owed to the courts. So that's why the percentage is down in circuit criminal. That's one of the other areas we want to look at to bring up to be a higher rate, at least 50%. I think if you can collect 50% in the criminal side of this in circuit court, that's a phenomenal number if you look at what the numbers are across the state. Nobody was higher across the state than 35% when this study was done. So we're close to the top there. So these are some avenues that I feel like if we concentrate on, that we can bring exceptional amount more of revenue in. The first year, once this goes into effect, July and that, first year, I think we can, on a very, very conservative side, bring in at least $100,000 in additional revenue. That's very conservative. So you're basically investing $44,000 and get $100,000 back the first year. I think it will be more. I think it will be a lot more if you allow us the opportunity to set this department up the way it needs to be set up. It's sort of like probation. We pay for our office through the revenue that we collect. We don't get any property tax money to run our office. It's run completely off of the revenue that we generate and collect. I've always felt like that the people that use the court system should be the ones that pay for it. It shouldn't be the taxpayer out here that never darkens the door of the court systems. We shouldn't penalize them and them have to pay to use the court systems. So we've worked very hard, the judges and I and everybody else that's involved, to try to make this a self-funding operation so it doesn't put a burden on the taxpayers. You can see our track record with the numbers that we've been able to generate in the past. When I first set this up, I came to the commission and asked them for one person, and that person's salary the first year I would do away with it. We quadrupled the first year at that one person's salary was. I came back, he gave me a second person, same promise was there, and we've more than paid for those two to do what they've done with excess. I'm giving you that promise again today. If you allow us this new position and allow us to reorganize and set up this cost collection department the way it needs to be done, that we will more than pay for this salary, and if not, I'll do away with it after the first year. And just to add a little bit to that, the county commission passed a couple of years ago, allowed us to add a fee on to help out the Haven House and Child Advocacy Center. If you remember voting on that, some of you were on board when that happened. And we collect money, revenues for them, and just actual money that we collected in 13-14 that we were able to write checks out to both of those organizations was $62,502. So you can see that we really do concentrate on trying to collect the revenues that's out there, the fees and stuff that we're supposed to. One other area that I can tell you is in the order protection area, and that is probably one of the toughest areas there is to collect revenue from, because and take out an order protection and they're not required to pay anything whatsoever to take out that paperwork. Once it goes to court, then the judge makes the decision of, depending on whether that person prosecutes, and after they have a hearing, if they don't, then the judge decides whether the respondent pays for it or the petitioner. Most of the time, it's the respondent that is taken out against, pays for that, and Judge Hedrick and I have worked really, really hard on making sure that those folks are paying for what they do. And the first year in 2012, the first year that we had order protections, we collected over $79,000. In 2013, we collected a little bit over $88,000. In 2014, we collected $78,000. So the 3 years and 1 month that we've had order protections, we collected $256,000. And Judge Hedrick can contest to this, how hard it is to collect the money off of those folks. So this is something that is very dear to my heart. I feel like I said, that I think that the people that use the system should pay for it. My staff does a great job. We can do even a greater job if you allow us this new position. Any questions? Which one
the services that we contract with for the collections, that we still have a service that we contract with, correct?
Well, we have signed a contract with a third party to start collecting. Now, we've been going through the process of converting all of that over to get to them. They have not actually started yet, but we're in the process. I know John and Laura have worked on that diligently here the last little bit, and some of the things that we're having to do is encrypt some of the things. So that's been a little hold up on that, but yes, we do have a contract, and we will start with that third party, we hope, within the next 30 days.
What will be the difference in what they collect and what your in-house people collect?
It just depends on what the cases are. We're going to work them for the first 18 months. Then after that, once it's over 18 months old, we're going to hand out to the third party. Because once they get to 18 months and that's when the people start moving around and it starts getting hard to collect. So we're going to move those over to them and let them concentrate on doing that collection. And then that way we can get the first 18 months, and then in-house is going to work on the 5-year and over, what we're going to do. Let me say this, the General Sessions judges have a cost docket every month, all 3 of them. I have talked to Judge Harrington, and we're going to start doing if you allow this, we're going to start doing a show cause docket in circuit court similar to what we do in general sessions. That way they're holding those folks accountable. If they don't, if they make a payment, they don't have to come to court each month. And most of them would rather make a payment than come and face one of the judges. So that's a big deterrent for us, and it's been one of the biggest assets for us to be able to collect the money that we've been able to collect.
Questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Tom. Next up, Parks and Recreation.
Requesting an increase of $18,924 over last year's budget. This increase will represent basically the increase in cost of health insurance, retirement, liability insurance, and all the personnel type items that go with that. Plus, we're hoping for a 2.5% step raise for employees. A few years ago, we went through the same type exercise you're going through now with a salary study, and it showed some need for increase in salary. Unfortunately, at the time we did that is when there wasn't a whole lot of raises been given out. So our plan to give small increases over a period of time to get where we need to be instead of one fell swoop, I guess, get in 1 year, it's kind of been put on the back burner for quite a few years. So we're hoping to get back in our step plan of increases in our steps for 2.5% for those who have not topped out.
Questions? Go ahead.
Joe, can you give a breakdown?
As far as what they're giving, and basically our total, well, the intergovernmental agreement requires that everyone gives the same. So, a lot of times we've had a situation in the past where governments can, and I know in the county hadn't been able to in the last couple of years. Actually, what we receive from the county now is less than what we got in 2008. So the past 6, 7 budget years, we've kind of operated at a net decline over that period of time. So we're trying to get back, we're hoping to get back at that amount where we used to be, where we should be, because the cities have kind of continued to give at their rate. So it's kind of made it a little uneven from that aspect. But we're hoping, if we can get back on track after this year and get our agreement back on schedule, and everything will go smoothly from there.
Joe, talk a little bit about, because there are some commissioners that are not familiar with Parks and Rec, the Metro setup that we're under, and a little bit about the history about how we got here.
The joint agreement was set up in 1970. The Mayor Blount Blount County agreement between the three governments, and we're kind of unique. We're actually we might be one of the only ones in the country exactly like we are. We're definitely the only one in the state where you have three governments that join together for one Parks and Rec department. And it's actually been a great partnership for three governments. Instead of having three separate Parks and Rec departments in a community, we have one. And the agreement we have, it's cost savings for all three governments because of the joint agreement, plus the fact we have opportunity to bring in some revenue. I think our budget right now is a little over $2.7 million. We generate a little over $905,000, which is about 34% of our total budget. And then the remaining amount of it is provided in appropriations from the three governments. So it's been as long as all three governments cooperate and work together, it's proven. I've actually had many callers from other communities throughout the state and some from outside state want to look at how we're set up, and they want to try it. But then they call back and they say, well, it didn't work. And I said, how come? They said, our city and government didn't get along good enough for that to work out. So I think it's a compliment to everyone here that it has worked this long in Blount County, and it's been a positive for everyone. The county does have, and that course, every park we have is in the county, if you really think about it. But as far as the non-city parks that the county has, the Everett Recreation Center, the Everett Athletic Fields, their football field, and 3 soccer fields, Louisville Point Park, Singleton Park, Richard Williams Park, Frank Bogle Greenway, Eagleton Park, and then also the Senior Center, which now we have over 800 members, is 60% funded by the county. So the county is very vested in this agreement. It's been a great, and their contribution is greatly appreciated.
They shut down pole climbers. Was that your all's maintenance on that?
It was.
So that's a maintenance that you're not going to have to do anymore?
Yeah, there's also some revenue we lost because with more teams and, that little facility, 2 fields generates some revenue for us too. Probably a wash. Well, we really missed the field. That's just, we're really facility starved anyway. Right. Most of our parks are pretty old and we hadn't been able to add any in a while. So losing two of those facilities, 2 fields like that really hurt us. And that's the city of Alcoa's responsibility.
In 11, 12, you had cut your budget 12.9%.
Exactly.
And are you even back to where you were before that 12.9%?
We're probably just close to it. Like I said, if we receive a request this year, we'll be back about what we were in 2008. Somewhere in there.
Is there any other questions? Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Your next drug court. Amy.
Hi. You're here tonight, you have my budget, the budget that we've submitted in front of you along with the letter that we had submitted along with that. In the years past, in the past 5 years, I've been able to come before the committee with growth of the program. We do have some growth over the past year, but that growth has been somewhat more minimal in the past year than in the past. What we have found is that we have played with our budget and cut our budget in as many ways as we know how to be able to meet the needs of the program with the continued growth to the point that there's just really no more play in the budget. As you can see, as you're looking at our expenditures, we have as far as operational costs, very bare bones funding to deal with. We have now had to, for the rest of this fiscal year, move the money that we had left in travel back into other operational supplies to be able to buy enough drug screens to be able to effectively drug screen the participants in our program for the remainder of the year, which is a necessity when you're dealing with the current population that we deal with. In submitting the budget, we have numerous requests that we have asked for, basically to get our program to an operational level with the 4 staff members that we currently have, myself included. The first is in our operational supplies and other supplies and materials, and we're asking for the $7,600 in order to be able to each year have the money in the line item where it's needed to buy drug screens. We have estimated that it costs around $300 per participant in order for a year to screen, and so that's where this direct amount comes from. Are y'all with me? Okay. Gotcha. And then on the salary changes, and this is for the employees that we have, we're asking for 3 additional staff members and 1 part-time employee. The part-time employee, just to clarify, we have gone through the state system with the TINWITS program. It's a computer web-based generated program that the state is mandating all drug courts have to use. With this system, it is requiring many man-hours of moving data from our old computer system we're using into the new, and it's not something that we have the option of doing. It has to be done. This part-time personnel would just strictly be someone who could come in and help with data entry, filing, and those types of things. The pay increases that I have requested, and those are in addition, I will go ahead and say those are in addition to those that were recommended to the Evergreen study. I have a case manager and an administrative assistant that are basically, and I've asked the committee, you've heard me with the same request in the past years, working at very low standard pay compared to other positions that of the same level. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
And also too, there has been, we have checked to see what hours, and these are averaging about 15 to 20 hours above the normal work hour week.
Within our office, we average 15 to 20 hours overtime a week. That's uncompensated pay, in addition to the lack of comparison in their regular salary pay.
It's a different type of position in that, for the most part, you're on call 24 hours a day. That most of the things that happen in drug court don't happen between 8 and 4:30. A lot of them happen at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we partner with, for instance, halfway houses, treatment facilities, all of those partnerships that we have developed. When they call us, we need to answer the phone and we need to directly handle whatever situation that they have, or else they're not going to take our participants any longer.
The program itself, right now, we are staffed and could accurately handle a caseload of 40 participants. That's what we're staffed for. We have gotten up to 82 participants within this fiscal year that we have been servicing. Due to the requirements through the courts, through the attorneys, through the community, seeing the success of the program and asking us to expand, to be able to take in more people. We're at a point to where without some assistance in the areas that I've asked, we simply are unable to continue to find the hours in the day of the 4 staff that we have to be able to appropriately continue to grow this program. At this point, there's no room for growth without help.
And basically what we find ourselves in a situation with now, and Mr. Garner's here, and there's other people that are involved in drug court that are here on other budget issues, and they can speak to this as well. What we find ourselves with is a waiting list. That we have people that are sitting in the jail because we don't have time and the place for them in the program. I mean, when you're talking about 80 people, when you have staff for 40, that's a dangerous situation to be in for us. But then it becomes an issue of who do you turn down? And what do you do when you have someone who's appropriate to get out of the jail to go ahead and start the program? We also have the ability, and we have other partnerships. Judge Gallegos is here. We would like to have a veterans track. We would like to be able to take some of the pregnant women that are in the jail and find placements, and we could do all of that, but right now we're drowning. We're drowning with our current participants with the 80, and if we were fully staffed for those 80 people, doing those extra tracks would be nothing. We could go ahead and start everything that we need to work with the veterans, to work with the pregnant women, to work with a misdemeanor population, and all of those things. It's just a matter of getting in place what we really need to operate.
With the requests that are listed in the budget that's presented before you, the veterans track we could add immediately. That is a staffing with the additional case manager and treatment staff. Because of the way a veterans court is set up, we would be on track at that point to go ahead and start a veterans track almost immediately. We could open the doors for that with what has been requested here, in addition to continuing on and expanding the program that we have already that is successful and has proven to be beneficial to the county.
Questions?
I think I have one question on the part-time position that you're requesting. Mm-hmm. It's primarily, you said, to implement the new software mandated by the state.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that is the amount of time, and an example that I can give you is on Friday or Thursday of last week, I blocked off a schedule of my time to enter 3 files into this new system, and it's a pretty complicated system. I got one of them in that time frame entered because the amount of information the state is requesting in this new computer-based program, it goes all the way back into their treatment as well as their past drug screens, their current drug screens, case management. Once it's all in there, the benefit from a state level is proven because what the state can do is then draw statistics from every drug court within the state to produce the results of that.
And we believe that once we can get our information entered, now keep in mind, each new participant, that's going to require data entry, and we're going to have to comply with the 10-WIT system. However, when the state can actually see our participants and everything that's going on in our drug court, that's only to our benefit. We just need to get the information entered, and it is time consuming.
And they want it backdated to 2013. So we're having to go, not just with our existing people, we're having to go back and enter all this information on participants that we served back in 2013, some of which are no longer part of the program, but that information still has to be entered. So we're even having to pull up closed case files and enter information.
And the software enables this county to interact with the state at all
Yes.
times, so
Yes.
it's real-time data?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just for benefit of the committee, this program is in the general fund this year because in the past, we've been unable to generate revenue for it to pay for itself as it was originally set up. So it's now in the general fund.
But still under the judges.
We were no longer able to defend having it in a separate fund because the comptroller's office wouldn't allow us to continue to run deficits there.
And that started back in the late 90s when we started on federal grants, and it had to be separated from county money. And so over the years, obviously federal grants go away, and that just stayed a separate item. And then eventually last year, we were able to get that corrected.
Amy, what you're calling probation officers, are those called case managers? Are they the
That
same thing?
actually, and that can be confusing in that one line item because there's only 4 staff members. What is under that line item is actually my case manager and my treatment specialist. And then the administrative assistant is under the secretary line.
And our treatment specialist is licensed. And so when we talk about the fact that we could immediately start a veterans court, we already have someone on staff who can do assessments, who can do the clinical assessments that need to take place, who already goes into the jail and takes care of that. So it's just a matter of if we could ever meet the needs of what we've got right now, adding those tracks would be actually fairly simple.
And when the case manager and the one treatment staff, we partner with Johnson University, and they have provided us with an intern. So we actually have the access to be able with that to hire an extra treatment person at a very early stage, someone who doesn't have like experience, who you can actually bring in at a lower pay scale than another licensed treatment specialist that's already providing services to our clients. So it's an affordable way to bring somebody else in to help with that burden of, because one treatment person trying to do all the treatment needs for 80 people is unrealistic.
And it helps because our licensed person, the other person can work under them. So it is a cost-effective measure.
How many clients will this allow you to be able to serve a year with these 2 additional and that 1 treatment staff? How many more how many more clients will you be able to serve?
To actually give a number, I mean, we have been very thrifty in being able to service the number we have with just four staff. If I can get my current staff at a standard pay and add in extra staff, I think we can come close to expanding well over 100, if not more, quickly. And we have a waiting list that we could then start addressing. One of the things that happens on our waiting list, and I know it's hard to explain if you're not in this type of field seeing it, but when I have one person who can do assessments, but I also have that one person who's providing treatment, whether that be groups or individual sessions and intensive outpatient groups. If she is tied up from the time she gets here till late in the afternoon, the ability to go down into the jail and do the assessments for potential clients that waiting list grows and grows and grows, because that can only happen when there's time to do it, because we can't ignore the people that are right in front of us already getting assistance from us. So that extra treatment person allows us the ability to be able to move the entire process along, not just service those people, but get those people into the services quicker.
And you've already got Judge Gallegos, who has expressed court, Judge Hedrick, who's expressed interest in a misdemeanor type recovery court in sessions. Obviously, I'm willing to expand the recovery court in circuit as far as we can, as well as take on a track for the pregnant inmates that are down in the jail right now, to try to offset the medical costs and try to better serve the population and basically be a better steward of the taxpayers' money, and try to cut the recidivism and work through it that way. It's really a very time-intensive, work-intensive effort, but everybody's already in place and we're all willing to do it. We just have to have a few additional resources.
One of the things that you might note in the letter that I added, and you'll see when you think about such positions as like an administrative assistant, we have an administrative assistant who has to assist with drug screens, who has to assist with those job responsibilities that fall upon case management. As myself, it's not like I can't devote all the time that's necessary to finding grants and preparing those because we're all kind of in the same pot doing the same job, trying to maintain status quo with what we have right in front of us.
So the programs that we're talking about, Judge, with the veterans and all of this would sort of fall under one umbrella?
The recovery court.
All of it would.
It's still traditionally called drug court as far as we're concerned here, but the state and national trend, it's recovery court. And recovery court has a lot of different faces and a lot of different tracks. So yes, we're talking about everything falling under the umbrella that's already there. We already have a director of recovery court. We don't need 4 separate directors for each track. So everything's in place, and we just need to be able to serve the population.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment on the Veterans Court, if I could. I want to make sure everybody understands that this is the only element that we're missing to having a functioning Veterans Court in Blount County. The aspect that Ms. Gallion's office would fill. Otherwise, we would have one, which I think is a very worthy cause, very useful, even if you don't particularly care about that category. I think it can help us in some of the issues with the jail. And the reason I'm saying that this is the only element we're missing is obviously there's really 10 members of a veterans court, and all the other positions are filled. This is all we lack. The judge, I will do that. The district attorney, Mike Flynn, has told me he will provide a person, so the county doesn't have to pay for that. Matt Garner, the public defender, when I talked to him, he told me we'll do whatever we need to do, so you all don't have to worry about that either. They have the added problem, or not a problem, but the responsibility of finding treatment providers. How do you pay for them, and how do you do it? We won't have that with Veterans Court. It's all handled through the VA. I've already talked to them about that. So that's not a problem. We don't need a provider. We have that free to this county. The treatment court coordinator, that would be Ms. Gallion's office. The community superintendent, that would be Ms. Gallion's office. Of course, they also work with probation from the county level. Ms. Surratt's already told me we'll do whatever we need to do. So that's not a problem there either. Law enforcement, the sheriff's already told me whatever we need, he'll do it. So that's not a problem. He'll provide the person we need there. They need the evaluator that they talked about for the other cases. They can do it in the Veterans Court. We already have a Veterans Justice Outreach Coordinator. That's provided by the Veteran Affairs Department. And I've talked to them. We have a mentor coordinator. That's a volunteer position, and we already have one of those. This is the only impediment to this very worthy cause. I asked this body to, for various reasons, but a personal reason is fund their office the way it needs to be, and you're going to get this for free, basically. And the community is going to get it for free, and it just really needs to be done. I think, Madam, we've been tracking these numbers for a while, and I'm thinking the last, we probably have in the mid-20s of veterans coming to the jail. That doesn't mean they're all going to end up in this program. It doesn't mean they're all going to be eligible. But that kind of gives you some idea of the level. It's just, it would be a very worthy program. And I certainly encourage you funding their office so I can work with them and get Veterans Court going. Thank you.
Thank you. And we could give you an impassioned speech by other people who want to do the misdemeanor track, or like I said, the women's track, or different things. Everybody's ready. We just need, there's a lot to be gained for the addition of what may seem like a lot on paper, but what you're going to get in return is just huge compared to what it looks like here.
Well, this is also going to kind of dovetail into some of the jail issues.
It is, and we're trying to be proactive as far as the jail issues, and also just reducing recidivism.
And I just want to, the jail, the sheriff's office, that whole entire, they have worked tremendously with our program. I mean, they have made concessions for the way things are done. For example, in the jail, they allow us to come in and do our jail class, which is men and women both in the same class, because we do not have the time and the resources to have a men's class and a women's class. And we're the only program that I'm aware of that goes into the jail that's allowed to bring both males and females into a room together to do a class, just because we don't have the time or the resources to provide classes for men and classes for women. So they have been wonderful in working with us in a partnership as well.
Amy, for you and for you, Judge Harrington, is there a possibility with the recovery court, as you work with the individuals or the inmates that will be coming through the program, that as they successfully complete the program, then you're also helping Judge Mr. Hatcher to recover some costs and some fines? So we also have some opportunities for recovery.
That is a requirement of the program. One of the requirements of the drug court I mean, we monitor their court fines, we monitor their probation fees. In the phase-up part of our program, they have to show that they have payment plans, and if they're not in compliance with their payment plan, why they're not, and then we go in and we try to help them with their budgeting to figure out how they can be in compliance, because they have to be paying. I mean, part of them paying on their court costs goes back into part of, I mean, our revenue sources are not a lot, but the ones that we do have, most of those come from the clerk's office. So we obviously, that is a huge push of our program, is to make sure, not just as far as their circuit courts, but child support issues. I mean, a large majority of our participants have back child support. We're constantly working with juvenile court and the juvenile system on their child support issues as well. So their obligations in a whole, whether that be to the court system, to the community, or whatever, those are all things that we work with them on a daily basis to make sure they're remedying and getting on top of those issues.
Their phase requests, that is one of the things that they have to be in compliance with their payment plan and program. And that's one of the things that we look at before you can advance. And it's amazing how quickly, once we're on track as far as employment, and that's one of the things that we monitor extremely close, then everything else seems to fall in place once we can build some employment stability. That's a huge part of our program.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Amy, you talk about grant money that's possibly available, but we simply don't have time to look for it. What kind of opportunities do you think we're missing?
A lot of the opportunities that we are missing come because of the way the program's set up. Recovery court, and the premise behind recovery court, is reducing jail time, reducing incarceration, which is a huge push. Our program is one of only 2 within the state that has an in-jail component. We feel like the in-jail component is a huge part of the success of our program. Our participants will tell you that 60 days in jail where they're getting treatment before they're released is a huge part of their success. They kind of get their heads wrapped around the program and recovery before they're ever released back out. However, the down part to that on grants is it automatically takes us out of a lot of grant opportunities because we have an in-jail phase.
The population that I handle through circuit court and recovery court is a population that otherwise would be going to prison. That's the reality about longer sentences. I mean, it's not unusual for me to have someone in recovery court that has an 8, 10, 12-year sentence, higher. And so you're looking at some people who've been through the system a lot. This is the last step. And so that 60 days we sort of use as a bargaining chip, because otherwise you would be going on to prison. If we were able to have a different track, say through Sessions Court or even another track in circuit, to where it didn't have the required incarceration phase, trying to get that untapped population before they become the felon that's about to go to prison, then there could be grant money available, because that phase would not require incarceration. That's where all of the grant money is in that population that doesn't have the jail time.
Recovery courts across the state are so different. There's family courts, there's misdemeanor courts, there's courts that deal and what services that county better. In our county, we have found more success with our circuit court dealing with that population and stopping the recidivism at that point. But there are still many other, as far as the track for pregnant women, the push right now, when you see the numbers of children that are born addicted, they're staggering. I mean, it's very sad to see those numbers. And so there's all sorts of grant money and opportunities for that particular population. So if we were able to open a track and start a track that would service that population, that opens us up to more grant funding for that specific track. And even in our current track, we're still servicing that. We have right now 2 brand new babies that were born drug-free to participants in our program, and we have 2 other mothers that are getting ready to give birth within the next 2 months. So within just this fiscal year, we're going to have 4 drug-free babies born within our program. And we're still not being able to get that money because our program is still operated under the one track.
Which the estimated cost of a baby born drug addicted is $250,000 in services before they're 18. It's huge.
Of course, there's potential for veterans grants. I can't tell you the specifics on them because I don't know them. On one hand, though, grants need to be pursued. But on the other hand, I don't want to say, well, let's wait around on Veterans Court until we get a grant and we have this unserved population for a year or 2 years. And that's why I'm talking about this. This guy, you felt like their office could take on the added burden if you could just get them to the point where they need to be with what they're already dealing with. They could take it on, and then potentially, perhaps we could get some grant money through the Veterans Administration, and that may be able to take care of an employee or some money to run the program, and then as it expands, then maybe that could be paying for some of the employees or some of the expense of the office. But I don't think it's something that we should sit around and wait on before trying to implement Veterans Court.
We need some type of stability within the existing program that we have, because what happens is when you go exploring for grant funding can go as quickly as it can come. And if you get grant money and you expand, and then you have all these great services, but then you lose your grant funding and you're left holding, okay, well, what do we do now? And you just, where does that go? So there has to be some underlying financial stability to the program in order to even explore those options.
And that's one of the reasons I asked was, it said, we started out with some grant money that then went away, but we don't have time at this point to be able to apply because we're so busy. So it's almost a catch-22.
It is.
But if there's money out there to help expand those types of programs, we certainly ought to be pursuing it.
I agree.
Understanding that the time to do that is very limited.
And I will say this, because you won't say it. The only reason that we're able to have 80 people is because of Amy Gallion and because of George Norton and because of Stephanie Monday and Deanna Reed. There's not 4 other people that would have taken on 80 people. It just wouldn't have happened that would answer their phone at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning consistently 7 days a week. That's where we are, that they have put forth that effort year after year, and we've been able to serve double the population that we really should be serving. I mean, that's the bottom line.
questions? Thanks for your dedication.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you all very much. Next up, Public Defender's Office, Max.
Good evening, Commissioners. I feel like small potatoes after all these large requests, but I'm kind of a special case. And for the new commissioners, I'm going to, for the old commissioners, a little bit of history so it will all make sense. Public Defender's Office is an office of the state of Tennessee that is by and large state funded. And although we have been consistently growing in the number of cases we have, and for instance, the extra kinds of services we're having to take on, like handling drug courts, the state has been reluctant to give us any more funds to be able to handle those services. But a few years ago, they passed an act that exists across the state where by county option, a $12.50 tax can be added to court costs of people who are convicted of crimes. So that if you're convicted of any kind of crime other than a moving traffic violation, that a $12.50 tax is added to the court costs that is earmarked by statute and by your all's county regulation to use to finance the Public Defender's Office because we're helping to represent those folks. So that this budget request does not come from the general fund. And I guess I'll take another small detour and urge you all to strongly consider Mr. Hatcher's request for additional funding, because Mr. Hatcher is trying to collect this $12.50 so I can get some of it. But anyway, basically this $12, we have to estimate, of course, in advance how much is going to be collected during the year. And I've got to say that on Mr. Hatcher's behalf also, when this collection process started, when this private act went into effect, that we were collecting money in the low $70,000 every year. And in the last couple of years, it's gone down into the mid-50s, so that we have had to, over the years, amend our budget downward because collections haven't kept pace with the, with what we originally were collecting. So basically my budget request is the same as last year. I think it's a few $100s more. The biggest change is that our landlord asked for an increase in our rent, most of which the state is covering, $1,200, $100 a month, of which we're asking to take out of this money. Under the statute and under the county ordinance, this money cannot be used for any purposes other than to help the Public Defender's Office represent its clients, so that we're not asking that any taxpayers' money go to our office other than what y'all pay to the state, that the state funds. We're not asking for any county funds we're simply asking for permission to use the money that Mr. Hatcher collects for me to help administer and run my office. Anybody there, I go over the individual line items, they're fairly trivial, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
For benefit of the committee, the revenue that the defender is mentioning is account 423601. It's a revenue account, and basically it covers the costs that he referred to, and that is also the case for the fiscal 16 budget.
And by the way, we appreciate y'all passing the that act. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any money, but the big things it enables me to do is to help pay the rent, to handle appellate cases. We have a part-time lawyer that does our briefs on appeals, and we have a lawyer that works part-time that handles all our cases in juvenile court. It would be, I don't want to overstate, we would be in terrible trouble if we did not have those folks. I don't know if we could be everywhere we needed to be and properly handle our clients' cases. So we do thank you for passing that back. Any other questions?
How much footage do you occupy now?
Can you hear me? We have 2 secretaries, 1 investigator, I've always got to count, 5 full-time assistants. And we are in the basement of the Kate Russell office building, for those of you who don't know. And we pay $50,000 a year, of which most is paid for by the state, and as y'all can see, about a third is paid for out of this county revenue. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
General Sessions judges.
Good evening. Along with the spreadsheet, I included a memo, I guess fairly lengthy memo in my packet to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it. Just bottom line is that in the spreadsheet, you'll notice it's the amount that we request is a little bit more than what it was this fiscal year, simply because two things are driving it. One, the state legislature has seen fit to give judges, both state and general sessions judges, a cost of living increase. It's excuse me, tied to the increase in the CPI from the previous calendar year. This year's was 1.6, so that's the increase in the judge's salary line item. The increase in the secretary's line item has to do with the projected amount that would be needed to finance the Evergreen stuff, or what the Evergreen came up with, and we got that from Ashley. There's really no other increases. We moved some money around in some line items, but we're not asking for any other increase in the operation costs or anything like that. We just moved some around to reflect more accurately what we think the estimated expenditures will be. Let's see. We got a nice, pretty colored pie chart in here for you that shows how the money is broken down. Nice, pretty colored, which shows all the lines and that type of thing. Excuse me. Further shows, again, just some of the same things. We just show it 2 or 3 different ways. And we list some of the statutes that, particularly for the salary line item, judge's salary line item that's required and that type of thing. We show you a history of our turnback, and it's gotten smaller, but it's directly related to, if you recall, we had that decrease in what it was, whatever year it was. Y'all asked for us to decrease the budget, and we've done that, but we still have pretty healthy turnback. And I included also, I don't know if you got to this yet, the number of cases that we heard in a 4-week period. And this 4-week period was February through the 1st of March. And that included, we had a holiday one day, 3 snow days in 1 week, 2 snow days in another. And we still heard over 4,800 cases in that 4-week period. I've listed again the job description for our judicial assistants. what they do basically to run the place while we're in the courtroom. I've listed our jurisdictions, the various jurisdictions we have. We have probably more than any general sessions courts in the state. Most of them just do civil and criminal. Of course, we have juvenile also, with Judge Foster, and we have the domestic relations, orders of protection, probate, and a tremendous amount of emergency health and mental health commitments because of the presence of Peninsula Hospital. I've further listed our dockets. And finally, what we believe the financial impact we have on all the other offices, including, of course, we help generate all the money for the clerk's office. Probation, for the mayor's office, we put folks on probation, we expect them to pay. We send people to community service over to the animal shelter as volunteers. We help the clerk and master, Mr. Ogles, and we try to do the best we can to keep folks out of jail, but some folks just got to be there. It's pretty much the same as I said. As what I had last year. It's just those increases. Y'all have any questions?
Well, first, thank you for everything you guys do. This is just for my education.
Okay.
And the other contracted services,
Yes.
what is that? I mean, what's involved in that? It's not much money, but I was just curious.
If we need supplies over and above what we have here, like we take it out of there. We usually don't use it, frankly. It's usually the biggest part of the turnback. But a few years ago, we bought an in-house security system out of it that we felt we needed to secure doors and have cameras in courtrooms and that kind of thing. So that's basically, like I said, most of the time we don't use it. Most of the time that's the biggest source of turnback. All right, thank you. Well, this is new for me. Let me give you a brief history of this office. Judicial commissioners were created by statute, state statute, before I was even on the bench, back probably maybe 30 years ago or better. And of course, they assist in the preparation of warrants, arraigning folks, and that type of thing. And back then, at the time, the judges that were on the bench, they did not want the administrative responsibilities for this office. So they turned it over to the clerk. It stayed with the clerk for until shortly after this budget year started. Myself, Tommy, Randy, and Craig Garrett sat down to try to figure out to change this, put it over into the judicial commissioner line item. And we did that. I frankly don't know whether, and we took money from Tommy's account to do that. And the way it was set up, we had 5 full-time folks and 4 part-time folks. The part-time folks were paid hourly only with no benefits. Full-time had just basically a salary that was paid out on a regular basis. And there was a dedicated, as I recall, Tommy's still here. But anyway, there was a dedicated amount in the full-time position, and then Tommy was paying part-time out of different places from his budget. And so when we made this transfer, with the help, with Randy's help and Ashley's help, we transferred what at the time we thought would pay for the rest of this fiscal year. Right now, we've determined that it's probably about $6,000 short, and there was a resolution to transfer another $6,000. I don't know. Did it pass? Okay. Now, based on, again, and I'm not trying to quote you wrong, but what I've done in additional assistance and Ashley's assistance, we think that we're going to be short next fiscal year unless I ask for some more money. We basically cut the budget out of Tommy's with a meat cleaver rather than a scalpel. Okay, I'll use that analogy. That's the way it worked. And so the increase that we're requesting we're requesting an additional $7,000, and then the other amount that you see is the evergreen monies. And you know, if we don't need it, you've seen my history of turn back. I'm going to turn it back in. You know, I'm not going to spend it. That's the reason, because I'd hate to come up short. Because right now I've only got 4 full-time folks. I'm utilizing more part-time to try to save benefits, save salary, and with that average, of course, these the ones over Knoxville have law degree. But what I've done, I've hired 2, one full-time and one part-time, and I got them from a pool at UT Law School. One has graduated and is getting ready to take the bar, and the other one is a practicing attorney. So I'm trying to up the level a little bit. And of course, we staff this position 24 hours a day, and most of the business is after dark. In fact, we overlap the early evening. All right, I got one more. I'm here on the 911 budget, the Emergency Communications District, Blount County budget. Jeff Kaler had a little medical thing going on, so he couldn't be here today. I wrote you a similar memorandum last year with the numbers. I attached to you the interlocal governmental agreement, some policy of the state board, and there's an Attorney General's opinion about maintenance of effort. Basically, what's occurred is that the way this thing's funded is that there's an agreement that county funds 49% of local funding, and the cities provide, well, Merrill and Alcoa provide 24 each. So in the past several years, the county hasn't provided for any increase. And and we understand that, you know, times have been tough, but that means that we didn't get any extra monies from the city of Maryland, the city of Alcoa, and they were all willing to provide us some extra funds, but since the county wouldn't do it, they didn't need it. The other source of funding, major source of funding that we have is, of course, the phone rate. Landline rates have been dropping like annuals, okay? Because, you know, little Jimmy Joe or Mary Sue, they don't run out and buy them a landline. You know, they get them a cell phone since they can. And so the funding used to be, we'd get $1.50 per landline for a residential and $3 for a business. And we'd get, and on your cell phone bill, you would see $1 for the cell phones. State basically kept about 75 cents out of that dollar. So as the landline rates went down, and cell phones went up, we kept losing money over and over and over. State recognized that, and so this past legislative term, they passed a new funding act that basically requires gets you $1.16 per month per phone, no matter what it is, whether it's cell phone or landline, and that's what we get now. It's supposed to be revenue neutral. It just went into effect January 1. We've gotten one check from the state. We don't know whether it will be revenue neutral or not. We don't have any idea. There's no history. So, in fact, I guess what we're asking is that we're asking the county for a 7.5% increase. It totals $22,660 and would raise the county's contribution in a like amount, and we'll be asking the cities for an increase also to match that. The indication we have is that they'll fund it. So, any phone. You should see that reflected on your cell phone bill this month or last month, I guess. And if it's not, please let your carrier know because we need the money. Here in Blount County? I don't. Jeff probably does, but I don't. But it's steadily going down. We've steadily lost revenues on cell phones for the last 10 years. Oh, no, excuse me. I'm sorry, landlines. I'm sorry, landlines, yeah. We hope so. We hope it's a little bit more than revenue neutral. Yes. Well, they haven't been required to because of the agreement. But, there's been every indication for the last several years that they were ready to pony up. Just because county didn't, they didn't. Yeah. We're paid every 2 months, so we just got one in February, and so it should have reflected. I don't know the number. I'm sorry. Sure. I'll be glad to look at that. Yeah. Yeah. I'll look at that and get back to y'all. I'm done.
Good afternoon, I'm prepared, Ron. Okay, as Mr. Hatcher explained earlier, the juvenile court budget has always been under the circuit court clerk's budget. And when I took office, I made the determination that I wanted to pull the juvenile court budget out of the circuit court clerk's budget. Just to start off with the good news, the budget proposal for juvenile court this year is $7,647 less than fiscal year 2014-2015. That excludes those salary recommendations pursuant to the Evergreen study. Even with the salary increases proposed by Evergreen, the increase of this year's budget is only $1,896 more. Several of you came and visited us in juvenile court back in December, and for those of you who did, this is going to be a little bit repetitive. For those of you who didn't, General Sessions Court Division 2, which is also known as juvenile court, is one of the busiest courts in the state. We have an extremely heavy caseload. We are behind only Shelby County, Davidson County, Hamilton County, Knox County, and Montgomery County. We're sixth in the state as far as our caseload goes in juvenile court. We have had 8,200 and some odd new cases filed last year. As of today's date, we've had 1,573 new cases filed since January 1 of this year. You need to understand that our dependency neglect cases average about 18 months from initial filing to close, and our courts are required to see those families and children every 6 months at a minimum. So we have a lot of cases on the docket. We do a variety of cases, and we have so many cases that we employ a full-time magistrate who is a licensed lawyer who sits and hears cases as well. We have a director of juvenile court services, 4 youth service officers, and a judicial assistant. And I want to point out to you all, it's very important that you understand that our youth service officers are required to have a college degree. This is one of the very few positions in the county that requires a college degree. They are required to have 15 hours of continuing education every year, and our juvenile court director must have 20 hours of continuing education every year. Juvenile court has 2 non-cash matching grants, one from the Department of Children's Services in the amount of $98,000 and change that we receive every year to fund our intensive home-based probation program. That program is for our most serious juvenile offenders. It is their last stop before they are placed in DCS custody on a delinquent or a criminal matter. The second grant we have was signed in October of last year. It's a $9,000 per year grant over 5 years to assist youth service officers in preventing kids from coming into custody. And Mr. Hatcher said that there were 3 courts doing cost dockets. There's actually 5. The magistrate and I run a cost docket once a month. And so since September of 2014, since I took office, we've generated over $235,000 in gross receipts. The elephant in the room is the Evergreen study, and I'm going to touch on it. This proposal does include an increase for salaries, and I wanted to point out that I talked about our youth service officers. They are college-educated employees. They're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week, because they have to see children after school. They chase kids on the weekends in the middle of the night. They are there doing intakes. They assist families who do not have kids in the court system, but they assist families informally. And there's a process for that provided by law. The average starting salary for a youth service officer fresh out of college is $24,000 in Blount County. In East Tennessee, the average starting salary for youth service officer is $31,000. Similarly, for the magistrate, the starting salary for a magistrate in East Tennessee average is $91,000, and our magistrate, her starting salary was $67,900, I believe, and she's not had any kind of pay increase since she started. That is it in a nutshell. Any questions? We are, and that is due to us pulling the budget out of the circuit court clerk's office. They pay our under lease payments as well, which is line item 330, and the printing item 340. We paid for all the copiers in juvenile court, in the juvenile court services office, in the clerk's office, in the child support clerk's office, and in the courtrooms. We're going to be pulling those out, and juvenile court's going to have about $1,900 is going to be the cost for that we've estimated for the next year. In addition, the printing, $6,000 of that, Mr. Hatcher said he needed. That was minute books, which are those really special minute books, the minute paper that goes in those books, the forms such as guilty plea forms. So our printing and stationery costs are going to be business cards and stationery. Yes. Yes. It is, because when you take out the $7,800 that Mr. Hatcher's taking, when you add back in the salaries, it's about $8,000, $9,000 total is what the increase would be. But see, we're losing part of that back to the clerk's office. Okay. Yes, I'm asking for 4 text-only telephones for the youth service officers. Many of our juveniles do not have voice capability, and this gives them a text-only phone through the county's contract with Verizon. That gives us 4 phones. That is the entire cost for the year. Pretty good buy.
And we weren't sure where to put it, whether it should be under other contracted services or communications, but it's separate so that you all know exactly what we're asking for. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Ogle. For the benefit of the new members, I'm the clerk and master. Our office handles divorces. We're a court clerk's office like Mr. Hatcher's offices. We handle divorces, other domestic matters, probate, and the county tax sale. We're responsible for 2 budgets. The smaller one is for Circuit Court Division 1. It's for area and office supplies. It's a straight status quo budget from last year. The other budget funds the operations of our office, the clerk and master's office. Other than the increases associated with the Evergreen study, the only increase we've asked for is in the next to the last line. We've asked for an additional $2,000 for corporate surety bonds. The clerk and master gets a new bond every 6 years, and this is that year for me. Kate Russell estimated that it would be around $1,900 premium on that bond. We put $2,000 in case it comes in over estimate. That's the only increase we've asked for. In 2013, the General Assembly doubled the amount of the clerk and master's bond for our county from $50,000 to $100,000. So that's why the premium would be more than 6 years ago. This line item will go back down to 100 next year, and it will be 6 years from now before we have to ask for it again. We have 7 deputies. Yes, we had 2 retirements last year and had to staff those positions, but I'm very happy to say we're back up to 7 and everybody's trained and things are running smoothly. Thank you for your time. I noticed there's a piece of paper laying between the 2 gentlemen's chairs right there.
Sheriff, would you like to come up?
I'd like to take a break first.
Everybody ready? Well, I always do.
Real quick, I look tired. I am. I just thanks to them. I spent 36 hours trying to get back home from a conference, and it's got on about 3:30 today. Quick overview. I think everybody in this room understands what the sheriff's office does and what services we provide for our community. I like to say, if you go around state or any direction that you would like to go, you'd see what we do is not the norm compared to law enforcement agencies in this area and across the state of Tennessee. There's nobody answers the phone after 4:30 in county government but the sheriff's office, no matter what the need may be. Even if it's the mayor's animal control, we refer them and or treat them nice. But when the ice storm hits, inclement weather, things of that nature, the sheriff's office is there. They were mandated by state law. The guys and the girls I got working for me do a fantastic job. And with that, the conference we just got back from was CLIA. It's an international certification of law enforcement agencies. They added one. 4 sheriffs went to the level to be CLIA certified. We had our on-site assessment in
think is the end of November. One guy had done 42 of these. He was a former sheriff, a former chief deputy. He said, we have the best sheriff's office or law enforcement agency that he has assessed in his entire 42 of them. So I think that's something the citizens should be proud of, that, you know, like the hospital is an accredited agency. Obviously, I want to go there versus somewhere that's not. They meet a certain standard. So we're very proud of the CLIA recognition, and we got the Word of Excellence also. As the judge said a minute ago, she mentioned Evergreen. Real quick overview how we got here. In the 90s, the sheriff's office did very well as far as the commission funding their increases. Since that time, we have fallen so far behind. I've had 7 officers leave in the last 30 days. Now, you're just not talking about one goes out the door, one comes in. These guys and girls knew they were going to get rich being a deputy sheriff. They had a passion. They thought they'd be able to buy a house one day. They thought they'd be able to take their kids on vacation one day. Have a few luxuries to enjoy versus getting garnished. You might notice this out here. They're almost, well, they're not almost, out of 300 employees, I probably got 125, 150 that's on or eligible for entitlement programs. How embarrassing could that be to a county government that runs this? And how we got here, where I want to touch on next. As I said, in the 90s, early 2000s, we progressed. We got almost competitive with City of Maryville and Alcoa. One gentleman here, I think, which Jeff Birchfield goes. He came from the City of Maryville because we were almost level with him. He liked the working conditions here better than there. Big mistake for Captain Birchfield. And I apologize to him every time I see him that we have not been able to keep up with the pay that they have. And how it got there, in 2002, a nickel was taken out of General County. So that's declined some. But a nickel was taken out of General County. 2013, another 9 cents was taken from General County. We gave 2 cents to Highway Superintendent Bill Dunlap. So that's 16 cents in 12, 13 years that we have given different places. If my phone mathematics are right, that's over $5 million. That's one thing that's shifted when the need arises, and I respect that and understand that because some has shifted through the years to the sheriff's office from other areas that we had a greater need. But a lot of those pennies went to salary increases. They took the money from General County and gave step increases. Myself and General County does not get step increases. We're at your mercy every year. Like, we put the program in place, but unless there's a funding mechanism, it's just a piece of paper. And every year the paper says, no offense to paper, but General County's are deficit. The reason we are is we've lived within our means, but we haven't taken the money and the growth of pennies and dispersed it to new technologies, new programs. To my employees, you see a few representatives here. You're going to see a lot more as the time goes. I thank the mayor and the budget committee for letting us or recommending that we do Evergreen. That's a great step. Now the big step is, can we fund it? And even if we fund it this year, can we maintain it? 2006, we were up here. Haven't got any raises for a number of years. We got an increase, and we went years without an increase. Was, you know, these other municipalities or other education department or different places that get the step increases, that's where they start their budget out. That's the last thing that the county government does is if there's a crumb here, we give it to the employee. Let's feed them. Golly bum, how much money does it take? And I hate to preach, I'm sorry about this. Does it cost us not to pay them? The turnover, the tens and tens of thousands of dollars that we lose in retraining. And I promise you, a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15-year veteran officer is going to make a better decision than a rookie. We deal with lives. We drive cars at a high rate of speed, emergency situations. We carry a lethal weapon. Unfortunately, we have to use those sometimes. I must say a mistake's made. How many hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars was the cost of legal fees. That's not accounting the payout if we have to pay out something if a mistake's made. Please consider Evergreen. And that's not to get us equal with anybody. Real quick, I lost a deputy 2 weeks ago to Loudoun County. Started out $10,000 more than I was paying him. He was a 5-year veteran. $10,000. Their starting now pay was $10,000 more. That's one example. Meigs County, it wasn't Bledsoe, but another county. It's on a week, the Pigeon Forge, I think he's starting out making about $14,000 more. Get us in the ballgame. We don't want any cheese. We just want our head out of the trap. And I think they deserve it. Real quick, you're going to hear about a record management system. We have some money in that we escrow through litigation and fines. We've got about $450,000 in that. 911 is changing over to this system. The sheriff's office has a system that has been in place since early 2001, probably 2001. We have outgrown that. Technology has passed that. I know across the county offices, they have updated technology. We have to, but we do have some to pay down on that with that revenue source. I want to sit down and let my deputy chiefs, they're going to go over the respective line items. Tom, Sharon, welcome to the budget committee. You'll have any questions, because I'll be here obviously, but the points I covered on Evergreen or anything that you would like to ask me. Yes, sir. I think there are special projects about the records management, and they'll address that, and some technology, body cams. I think you've seen the nation going to that technology trend. I think I'm least compelled to ask you all for it, because when something happens, we don't have them, and a good-looking lawyer in a sharp $5,000 suit gets us in front of a jury. Why don't we have that? Well, I'm not going to say because I didn't want it. I'm going to say because it couldn't be funded. But they will go. I think there might be one or two, Mayor, in there, but they will go over that. I'll be right here in case there's any questions.
Good evening. I'm Jeff French, Chief Deputy with the Blount County Sheriff's Office, for those that call. And I'm seeing you in the jail inspection committee. I just want to, my part of this is I want to kind of go over our process in the Sheriff's Office of how we come to our budget. Prior to being appointed Chief Deputy, I was the Assistant Chief of Administration, which handled the budget. And one of the processes when the Sheriff appointed me Chief Deputy that we implemented is we did an internal budget committee. Each function, which you're going to hear from each function in the Sheriff's Office in their special request, submitted a request to the Sheriff and myself. And as a committee with the other deputy chiefs, we went through and picked out those needs that we felt were most pressing, not only to the department, but to the citizens of Blount County. And I'm going to introduce, first off, Deputy Chief Millsaps, who's going to go over some of the operating line items, special requests. As you know, as you see on your agenda, we have several budget cost centers. So majority of these will be in 54-110 and 54-210, which is the corrections. The first one is the Sheriff's Office, and the second one is the detention facility. So with that, Deputy Chief Millsaps is going to come up and talk about a few requests, and then we'll go down in different functions, and they'll talk about their areas.
Good evening. First of all, serving on this committee and looking out for the best interest of the financial end for Blount County. So thank you all for that. We are going to jump around a little bit through the accounts just due to some of these line items being in different functions of the Sheriff's Office. But I'll start with account 101 and 54-110. There's a couple of operating requests that we put in there. A lot of those kind of speak for themselves just because of increases of things that have tangible goods that have went up in cost, and we haven't been able to increase those line items in the last several years. So that's basically what a lot of those are. Basically, cost of maintenance to repair vehicles. You can see that, parts go up, and we have to pay those costs. Also, in number 406, which is ammunition, just to give you an idea about ammunition, ammunition has drastically increased over the last 5 to 7 years due to the war that's going on overseas and due to the high demand of everything that's happening nationally with ammunition. So if we place an order today for ammunition, it takes 6 to 9 months to even receive that. And that's on the estimated side. A lot of times it's taking over 12 months to receive ammo. Some of the ammo that we're asking for is basically for our training academy that we use, also for the in-service for our officers that we require each and every year to attend a firearms training course to show proficiency with that weapon. Also with our specialized teams, with the SWAT team, chemical munitions and distraction devices and things like that are kind of required for those roles. So that gives you an idea of what that additional request is for. Also gasoline, I think we've met within our budget this year on gasoline just because the price of gas has reduced since in the year's previous time. But if you've kept up with some of the estimates, it's showing that it's going to go up this summer and probably progressively go up in price. So that's why we're asking for an additional increase for the gasoline line item. Again, equipment and vehicle parts, just basically just due to cost in those items. Another big one is as far as a capital request goes, is for PC, software, and vehicle MBTs. You can see we're requesting $181,000 for that. The computers that we have on the desktops are 7 to 10 years old. They're all running Windows XP, and that also is what's in our cars is running Windows XP. If we're looking to change software of any kind anymore, Windows XP is not supported, and you can't upgrade those machines because they don't have the capability of running faster Windows or the new software that's out there. So to replace that is very costly to the sheriff's office and to us. So that's what that large amount on that is for. Any questions on any of the items that I went over?
Maybe one or two.
Yes.
As it relates to your equipment parts, vehicle parts, that kind of thing, I'm assuming then that we run our own vehicle repair shop?
We do. The sheriff's office, we have a supervision and a technician, and also it's staffed with inmate. We use inmate labor to change oil, to do minor repairs to vehicles, and to help offset cost for manpower in our service garage. So we service all of our vehicles that we have, along with some of the other county offices' vehicles as well.
And do we have in that fleet of vehicles, what would be the average age of most of those vehicles?
It varies. I know we have a 1969 Volkswagen Beetle. I think it's a 69, is that right?
Their average life of a unit in the sheriff's office is 7 years. I take into consideration a brand new car was out of the way. But how we hand that car down to patrol emergency services to the school resources officer and support services, average life of the car is 7 years.
And we try to turn those, don't we, Sheriff, at that same time?
Every year.
Just as he mentioned about the price, in 2002, their vehicle line item, 5 vehicles have not grown since 2001. I think 2001. We're on 5 to 30 cars a year. Now we're able to do the inflation cost of vehicles. We're able to squeeze out about 16 a year. So we really reduced expenditure on the car part product.
Has there been any thought, Sheriff, into doing an investigation or a comparison of lease versus buy?
Yes, we've done that a number of times, a couple of years. I think Randy can speak to that. We get money cheaper than we can borrow money from the lease, but we have looked at that at least on 3 occasions. First year we got ahead, and after that, it was kind of locked you down. Every 7 years it will grow over.
Thank you.
That's the mobile data terminals that's actually inside the vehicle, which are basically just your standard laptop at this point. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Chief Long is going to kind of address it more in detail on that, but. All right, I'll turn it over to Chief Talbot.
Thank you. The first thing I want to cover tonight is the 5th Judicial Drug Task Force grant. We had, I was present earlier when I heard Amy speak about drug court or recovery court. And she had mentioned, or I think I used the phrase that you know, grants come and go, and a lot of programs start out, you know, operating under a grant system, and then they actually take it back or you actually lose it. And that's actually what, in fact, has happened to this grant. We started receiving a grant to run the drug task force back in the late 80s. And for a number of years, we continued to receive these monies. And annually, those monies started out initially to be $90,000 a year. And that's where the grant money required a 25% match. Over time, that $90,000 went to $60,000, and the $60,000 went to $30,000. In a couple of years, it went completely away, and then it came back at another reduced amount. And this year, we're operating with nothing once again. So the request that we're making for the grant replacement for the drug task force is for $30,000. And that $30,000 is because the grant funds went away. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the budget for the task force, or that the task force operates off of. It's generated when I created or wrote the budget for this upcoming year. I wrote it for 3 different contingency plans. One contingency was whether or not we were approved this $30,000. Another contingency was if we got our other grant funds, which is another $5,000 that we get from the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators. And the other contingency is if we actually generated or received the revenues that we had appropriated for this year. So basically our revenues come from about 5 or 6 main areas, but sessions fines and circuit fines, and you heard Mr. Hatcher speak earlier about the collection of fines. So about 45 to 50% of our annual operating costs, excluding salaries, comes from the generation of fines from the 2 different courts, circuit and sessions. The rest of it comes from match money and grant funds and forfeitures. So you never know exactly what you're actually going to get. And Mr. Hatcher alluded to tonight the problem with having people pay their fines. The great part about that is it doesn't come at a cost to the taxpayers, or at least it hasn't in the past. If someone's arrested and they're assessed a $2,000 fine, that $2,000 fine goes back to the drug task force, and then they use that $2,000 in their upcoming budget. The problem is if they don't get the $2,000, then you don't know if you're going to make budget that next year. So that's some of the problems that we're faced with. The other problem is just like you heard Mr. Millsap's talk earlier, and a lot of other people, is the cost of stuff goes up, it fluctuates. And it's funny to sit back and listen, because a lot of the costs associated with operating other divisions or functions or departments of the county, you might hear somebody talk, well, the price of gas is going up, the price of ammo is going up, the price of electricity is going up. And we have to deal with all those issues at the same time. But then we talk about, well, Gallivan, what's an ounce of marijuana going to cost us today? Because I can tell you an ounce of marijuana 10 years ago was about $100 or $90, depending on where you bought it from. You might even pay up to $120. Well, now they've got high grade marijuana. So an ounce of marijuana today is $400. Years ago, we didn't have a heroin problem in Blount County, and we do now. Heroin costs $40 for 1/10 of a gram. And I bring these problems to you and suggest these prices because we have to look at the price of drugs in order to conduct narcotics-related investigations. If you're selling drugs that we can't afford, we can't investigate you because we don't have the money to make buys from you. And when you sit back and you look at the totality of how everything within this county works, Judge Harrington was talking about the way that Amy Gallion runs recovery court earlier, and I wanted to stand up and say amen. I used to sit on the drug court board. The whole process works together. The people that are in recovery court are the people that we've investigated. And the people that we've investigated, they go to jail, and some of them qualify for going into the recovery court. And these are the people that have hit rock bottom, that are not productive members of society anymore, and without the means of being able for us to spend the funds and conduct investigations on those individuals, and then they go to court, and then they go to or accepted into recovery court, they become productive members of society again. And when they do that, then while we're attending this meeting, they're not at your home stealing from the outbuilding, or they're not maybe committing a shoplifting crime, or they're not out here driving while impaired or intoxicated, and just a number of different things. So it all works together all the way from when we first started investigating people to the point where recovery court is interviewing these individuals and trying to get their life back on track, to Mr. Hatcher collecting the fines, and those fines going back into the original arresting agency, who is trying to capture enough of those funds in order to go out and investigate the person that's living next to the next, family member of somebody that's selling heroin or selling pills, which is another huge problem. That one pill costs $30 now. I mean, it's just morphine is 50 cents a milligram, and it's ridiculous that it costs what it costs. But that's just to buy the drugs. And then you have to pay informants, and then you have to buy equipment to record with, and then it has to be a certain kind of equipment that's encrypted so that it can be admissible as evidence in court. So those are some of the things that we're faced with in narcotic investigations, and that's what we're asking for the $30,000, is because those grant funds have dissipated. If you have any questions on that, I'll be glad to answer those before we move along, or I can continue, and if something comes to mind, then we can back up and go back to it, whatever you prefer. The next on the list is crime scene equipment. It has been a number of years